Yeah, you can continue.
Okay. Hi guys, and thanks for the introduction. My name is Matt Knowles. I'm so currently with EPAM Systems. Have been on contract with Wolters Kluwer for the last 3 years now. On top of that, working with a couple of guys here. I don't know if any of the other guys have turned up, but I know they know this here, and I don't know if Siobhan's here, but sort of Vibov is also here. So everything I talk about and whatnot today is kind of those guys have been involved. Feel free, and those guys feel free to sort of jump in, flesh out anything that may need further explanation. So feel free. I like to see these things as a collaboration as much as anything else. So let me go into this. So we started off. Well, actually, let me first of all ask a question. Does everybody know or have an understanding as to what Sitecore CMP and Sitecore Content Hub are? Or does anybody not know? We can do a quick 3 or 4 minutes of going through to show what this is first, because obviously without this knowledge, the rest of this talk is a bit of a waste of time, shall we say?
Yes, Matt, we can do a quick introduction to Content Hub.
Okay. So Content Hub was a product formerly known as Style Labs that Sitecore acquired about 3 years ago now. So give or take, it started off as a digital asset management system, which is exactly what it says on the tin. Allows you to store in a cloud native solution thousands upon thousands of assets. So Sitecore initially saw this as a replacement for Sitecore Media Library, that with modern day sites growing, getting larger and larger and larger, Media Library, which traditionally stores the blob objects of your assets in SQL Server, was starting to sort of creak under the seams. It wasn't, and still isn't, sort of cloud native. This product is entirely, completely, runs in the cloud, natively has an edge service in front of it. So everything you want to deliver your digital assets. This product, over the last few years since I've been involved with it, has started to expand, and CMP, which is like a content management extension of this, and is about to become or be the base of probably shouldn't be saying this, but I was told, so just well, it's being recorded, so it is me saying it, but fair enough. But Sitecore do have a plan to extend this and have it operating as a very, very lightweight but full-featured CMS for people in organizations who don't need the full weight of like a Sitecore XM or XP instance beside it. So what Sitecore CMP gives you is the ability to define sort of media types with various fields. In this case, let me just bring this up. In this case, a handful of text fields. You can add images. You can do whatever you want, and this supports workflows. So you can pass this through. So similar to Sitecore, you can pass this down. You can create an asset. You can pass it between external people. You can go through a full-featured workflow process, and it also natively, because it's a cloud native, supports out of the box, so pushing messages onto things like queues, HTTP requests out to function applications, and so on and so forth. So what Sitecore gives you out of the box is a action. is actions that push messages onto a service bus, and Sitecore provides a CMP connector out of the box that will listen for those messages and suck bits of data into Sitecore based upon a specification that you specify via configuration. So that in a nutshell is CMP. So we started off about 8-9 months ago with a massive SXA site. It's by far and away the biggest Sitecore site I've worked on in my career, which, as was pointed out not that long ago, is becoming depressingly long as I get old. But this is one huge site. 3 tenants. I've got 14 sites there. I think it's a bit less than that. I think we only have 10 sites active, but the largest site has about 100,000 pages, 400 content editors. We have external search integration, so we don't use anything native to Sitecore for search. We push things into an in-house Wolters Kluwer search engine that is used across the organization for searching all their assets, not just at our pages. And in addition to that, because we use SXA, because we want like a nice standard styles, a uniform, so products are going out there, we massively heavily use branch or templates, and we'd also invested very, very heavily in sort of in a fully featured workflow with various notification rules, would customize the workbox, etc., etc. So there's been a lot of work done on that as well. We were and are hitting limits as to what Sitecore likes to do natively. The number of editors was, the number of simultaneous editors meant we start to suffer from performance issues in the CM instances. The natural flexibility of Experience Editor, so coupled with the nice easy ability that gives you, especially when combined with Experience Accelerator, allowed those editors lots of flexibility on the pages. We wanted to tie that down. So what we wanted to do was use CMP as an editing tool. So if I come back to CMP and just show as a guide for this, let this catch up. If I go to edit this, all I can do is put texts into the fields. I can't add anything, I can't change anything, I can't I have styles, but I have only styles that are fully authorized. I can't get under the hood and edit the HTML. This thing is completely locked down. So we wanted to tie the users down, reduce load on the Sitecore, so content servers, and so obviously to allow and to roll out the editorial functionality to even more users. As despite the number of editors we had, even at that level, we were still at the stage of people were drafting Word documents of a press release they wanted. They're still sending it to editors who are editing it. We want to get rid of all of that. So next, we want to manage the taxonomy across both systems. So obviously, when we produced when we spec'd out and when we designed the data structures in Sitecore, we spent a lot of time, on the page data, getting the tagging right. all of these things. You know, spent days and days making sure everything was as should be, everything worked, everything was linked up together. What we needed to happen was to get all this data into Content Hub, which also supports taxonomies and so on and so forth. But we had to link these two things together. So we had to move thousands of data items from, excuse me, from Content Hub, from Sitecore into Content Hub, and have those two things synced. Then we needed to add single responsibility, create single responsibility between the two systems. So for argument's sake, this page is coming across, and this is going to become a page within Sitecore and pushed onto the website. So from here, we will be pulling across the title, the quote, and the body. What we want is those fields owned by whoever authors these fields in CMP. However, when it becomes a page in Sitecore, marketing might want to add onto this page links to other related stories that are search driven, but obviously that isn't coming from here. So what we want is within this one page, we want single responsibility on a per field level basis, if that makes sense. And then lastly, we want the whole lot into one combined workflow. Out of the box, the connector that Sitecore gives you will give you, it brings across text fields. It will bring across CMP linked taxonomies, but all it will do is bring them into a text field and separate them via a pipe. This is not, it works, but it's not what we needed. We had a massive investment in things as they were, particularly with the external search. It brings in a flat structure. So one item in CMP relates to exactly one item in Sitecore. As I said a few minutes ago, we massively invested in branch templates. So if you can imagine this, so more than likely in a typical Sitecore architecture, the title will be on the page object itself, but the quote might well be on a local data object, as might the body. So what we needed to do was the ability to extend the import. So when things came across, we could map to not only the page item, but we could spin up from a branch template, add the fields into the relevant local data items, and so doing it that way, as well as being, I think, a slightly nicer architecture for a page, because those fields are off the main page item, allows A/B testing, those sorts of things, which once you get heavily into Sitecore and you have a Sitecore site, that's what you are ultimately paying all that money for, those nice things it gives you. And the sync is one way only, so there's no way of pushing the data back from your XP/XM instance up to a CMP server. So we ended up with this as a feature gap analysis that we had. So this is kind of distills what I've been saying. So it will only bring into templates. The taxonomy integration works to Sitecore wanted to, but not as we'd invested in. linked assets, considering it's a digital asset management system, linked assets could not be brought into a page into image fields, which is what we needed, and there was no support for workflow integration, and there was no support for item versioning within Sitecore, and finally a very difficult problem to solve, but we got this working and it's really nice. Field level locking. So like I said, the single source of truth, you bring something across from CMP, we wanted those relevant fields locked in both content editor and experience editor, so no one in Sitecore could change those. It was absolutely the person creating it in CMP was responsible for those fields. Any changes had to come from CMP. So for taxonomies, we needed an export pipeline similar to the export one. Second point's the most dev-friendly, the most devy bullet point I've written in my life. Add items of type T when type Y is created. I'm sure you all know what that means. I'm sure I could rethink it and make it a hell of a lot more marketing friendly. And then once those items are exported, make them linkable back into Sitecore. And finally, so pages as taxonomies. So whereas we have single source of truth for individual items, the source of that single source of truth varies between system. So in some instances, Sitecore was to remain the single source of truth, but those items needed to be kept in sync in CMP. In other cases, we needed that data moving up from Sitecore into CMP, and CMP was then going to become the single source of truth. Is everybody roughly with where I am so far? Does this all make sense?
Yep. Yes.
It also allows me to have a quick drink, so I sound less like I've got a mouthful of sand. Okay. I'm going to give the demos a miss, basically, because there's some issue on the EPAM servers this morning, so I can't get properly into the server I've set up for that demo to show it. So basically, what I'll do is talk through what we did here. So let me, as we all know, Sitecore works very heavily on pipelines. So we have so for the export, we added in an export taxonomy pipeline. Nice and simple. It checks if the export is needed. So basically, what you have is on item update, on item save, however you want to define that. We have a list of in CMP configuration. We have a list of export fields. I don't want to see any changes to anything. And these give the Sitecore template where they sit in Sitecore and the taxonomy name in CMP. So basically what we do is when something is saved and updated, we check to see if it matches these criteria, and if it fields. Oh, sorry, this is the export one. I apologize. That was the import one, but it's pretty much the exact same. We check to see if it matches this template, and if it does, we do a lookup to see if it already exists, and we update it. If it doesn't exist, we create a new item of that type, and we push it up. And then there's a couple of fields that that Content Hub always needs for things. So one is the entity name, so we define what field it is, and the language friendly name, which is kind of like the the display name in Sitecore so parlance. So basically we push on save based on these settings items up to CMP. And just one more thing that I wish I could demo because I really do like it. We added a little bit of sort of PowerShell that basically, obviously, you start off with trees of these items which don't exist in CMP, and you want to push them on bulk. So it's a little bit of like some PowerShell scripting that basically starts from a given point in the Sitecore tree. Will basically enumerate down that tree and push everything and push everything that matches those criteria up to CMP. So I think that covers off. I think that covers off how that works. I will after I've done this talk, I will get. I did a very similar talk at SubCon EU. I'll post a link to it here so we can see the video. It's just a YouTube link. If you want to have a look and see this thing working, great. Feel free. If not, yeah, that's fine. That's fine so too. So once we had the exports sorted out, we needed to get the imports working as we needed. So first off, we needed to extend the Sitecore Sitecore default sub behavior, so to allow it to create content based on a branch or template. We needed to, when the item was created, we needed to push the fields that came from CMP into local data items, and we needed to make images behave in a WYSIWYG fashion. So if you were an editor, it felt like you were editing a page rather than a data item. So I'll just look at this. So as you can see, the import entity pipeline is completely and utterly rewritten from scratch. There is nothing left of Sitecore in here. This is in the repo, and I'm just going through, just for reference, going through with the powers that be at Walters Kluwer permission to share this repo, because obviously everything we did for them is owned by them, and there's no issue. But like anything big and corporate, it doesn't happen in 5 minutes. It takes a little bit of time, but all this will be made available should anybody want to improve it and extend it, which improving it probably won't be hard, because I'm better at talking about stuff than I am at doing stuff most of the time. So what we do, I will just show the key things here. So what we do is so the base behavior just runs on templates, like I said, not on branch or templates. We check to see if a template field is a branch, and if so, we spin up based upon the branch, and we return the top level page from that branch. We then let me see what else we had. Just to go through this one thing at a time. Sorry, apologies. Show conversions. This is the one. Yeah. Out of the box, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but out of the box, it doesn't support versioning. So CMP supports versioning, obviously, and as does Sitecore, but the connector didn't. So if you have an item that has come across any updates, just update the latest sort of version. So we allowed to specify the workflow and the starting state, and if the page and/or data item was in anything other than the initial starting state, we create new versions. So that allows you to maintain proper item and data versioning in Sitecore from this. We then did a bunch of other things. Linked data is, let me see. I'm just going through the important bits. That's the relation. Save data source field values. This is the one I wanted. Sorry. So for branch templates, what we have, I will show you in Sitecore. Then I'll quickly show you how this works. So in the import, use import. So we have things like the content that is linked to a page item. Trying to find the relevant one. No, sorry, the sidebar. So you have this. So you have the field name in CMP. You have the related item path, which you just do as if it's a local sort data item, and then you feed in the field name in Sitecore. And all we do is we, from the base item, modify that query, find the item we're going to update, so put it into edit mode and update it. So we just spider down. And the other one that kind of is important is the image field. So when you have in CMP, so let me come to this, and you want to I'll delete everything in here, and we want to imagine this is an image field. I don't think the assets are currently working on this. I do think this server is relatively balked. Yes, it is. Images aren't working on this. So what we want to do, as we can see here, so out of the box, attachments work like this. So you go to add attachments and you bring the image in. As we can see, no media items are working on this, but what you would get in here is thumbnails. What you wanted to happen was images would come into here and bring it in line as if it was editing in a page. Now, what Content Hub gives you for that, as the output of that, is basically the image tag into a field. So we needed to do some manipulation on that to get the field data we need to populate a Sitecore image field. So how we do that is good old-fashioned regular expressions. So so we pass that field for that regular expression. We pass into it the extra stuff we need by making API calls back to Content Hub. So we populate the full field as is stored in a Sitecore image field, and then we save the image field with the string that basically is this, but with the extra things that are padded out from the API calls. Sorry, just take another drink. I apologize. Sorry. And as we see, there's lots of other little things in here, but they're all variations on similar themes. So kind of in some fields we had child data items with images. So we have a set image in local data source items, but that just is a combination of the previous thing and this thing, so two. Okay, so next thing, we want editorial control of individual fields. So we need to lock down imported fields to allow each field to have a single source of truth. This needs to be switchable, i.e. we need to determine, in our case, we have, I don't know, several thousand news items. So currently, previous to bringing in CMP, we can't lock those down because those aren't CMP field items. So if we lock those fields down and they need to be changed in the future, nobody can do it. So the output of that, we need editors to CMP editors to edit what they need, Sitecore editors to be able to do what they have to do on top of that, add to it, but not change it. So another very quick talk through of code. Find the configuration and then I will pipelines rendering. So obviously we need to do some work on both experience editor and content editor, and we need to work out whether the individual fields are mapped or not. So within Sitecore, you have something like this. So a news item comes in, we need to lock display name, audience, business area, content. So we need to lock these things, but if there are other fields that might need to be subpopulated, they need to not be locked. So how do we do that? So first off, when we do the rendering, let's just look at the content. They're both similar, but very very similar outputs, but the code is sadly quite different. So basically, we override a rendering formatter, and all we do is we have an import mapping service that determines if that field needs to be read only. So how this works is it gets the item and it gets the field ID. So it works out based on that item. Is there a mapping item based upon it? i.e., is there one of these? Is there one of these that matches it? Because if not, we're not going to be locking it because it's not the sort of data that's imported. And then if there is a mapping item of that, we get all the child mappings of that, and we work out does the field ID match up with this field ID. So we loop through and we go, right, is there a field ID that is mapped? If it is, yes, we lock down this field. And obviously for local data sources, it's a very similar process. We just we then go off the child template and the path, and then do that. So it's very similar. I don't like code duplication, but I couldn't see a way around that. And the experience editor one basically does a very similar thing. It maps into the same service. Just all the parameters it uses and the pipeline it uses is a little bit sort of different. Thankfully, we also don't use Sitecore's newest one because that would have to be a third one to plug in. But thank God for small mercies sometimes. So that's how we lock. And obviously, this whole thing is switchable, as it only works on imported items, and we can turn it off or on at the import level. So we might want, or the client might want to have some items imported, but not lock items of that type, or just not implement any field locking at all. All of this is completely and utterly switchable. So the end point of this was low-level ideas, so coming in as email, and content authors implementing that, creating the page and doing their thing. The end point of this is authors in CMP who we don't want to grant access to Sitecore, basically creating the page as they see it. The pipeline creating a skeleton page in XM, or in our case XP, with everything it needs to have that page, and basically the Sitecore stroke marketing editors adding all their nice fluff on top of it. So the last thing I'm going to show you is the workflow, and I will thank you at the end. I just pressed that button a little bit early. So obviously you go to, pardon me, you go to, let me stop editing this. In fact, let me refresh this page because I don't know whose content this is. I'll sign back in. So as I said, so Content Hub has workflow. So here is in new status. So imagine I've just done some work on it. I submit this status. It then goes to pending approval. So we have workflow states in here. So this comes in under, just to show you, this comes in as in the state flows part of this system. So we have CMP. So we have, these are the states of this, and I mean it's quite similar to Sitecore workflow. We see how these things work, and you push things. So you push things down the pipe, and what we needed to do was work out how. So we get to here. So this is ready to publish. At this stage, this triggers the action I showed you earlier, which sends it down to Sitecore. We then need the people in CMP to be able to see that something has changed within Sitecore, so they get to see it's in progress, blah blah blah. So for this, we created nice and straightforward. This won't take more than a few seconds. We created new workflow actions. Let me just straight there. CMP import workflow. So there, so we see here what we do is we just have on this we have a workflow state ID, a field for comments. This picks up the Sitecore so comments field, and the sorry, this is the state we want to set it to in CMP, and this is the comments field, and this is just the default how Sitecore knows what action to invoke. I'm not really this full of myself. I just had to remove all references to Walter's Kluwer in stuff I was doing in subcon. So the best thing I think of was my name. So let me just quickly show it. This is just nice and straightforward. So all we do is quite nice straightforward workflow action. We grab the target identifier, as in this, what we want to set it to in CMP. We get the Content Hub identifier off the item. All items that come across get a like a random identifier, like your Sitecore IDs, to just uniquely identify it. Then we set the workflow item state. That is basically just a web call back to the interface, just a web call back to CMP to get the IDs of these relevant things, and then it updates the workflow before saving the item, and then does the exact same thing for the notes field. If the notes field is filled in, updates the relevant item in CMP with that notes field with whatever is set to. So again, nice and straightforward, nice and basic, but that allows the person in CMP to see what is going on, see where things are, saves emails being sent, saves phone calls, all those things that cost money and time for people who massively care about those sorts of things, and just makes the whole thing really, really smooth. So just as a very quick overview of the sort of thing that can do, because we have the workflow, and because Sitecore is updating the CMP workflow, we can, let me just go and show you, we can then action upon these things over and above that. So we can put actually let me show you how a listener is configured first, very, very quickly, because I'm aware I've managed to talk for most of the hour. So let me see this one here. So you set up an action, and an action has so it happens on M-content. M-content is just the default definition for all CMP items. You can change it if you want to. You can subclass it, add things to it, but in the case of this, we don't. For the case of demoing that was overkill. So we want to see where the active state, the current value, has gone to publish an XP, and where the content type is news, and the action we want to push it out into a service bus. So a hypothetical use case of this, you create a news page in CMP, you push it down, it then goes through Sitecore, it gets published in Sitecore. When it gets published ultimately in Sitecore, what you want is to, in this case, send out a tweet to say, we've just published a new news page, here's the title, here's a link to it. So we push that, and we can, if we want, add in. This is just a nice little simple function app, and again, the principle is the same. Again, sadly I can't demo this, but like I say, I'll post everything in. Listens to that, service bus, gets the item, gets the relevant fields that we want, so the URL and the tweet text, and then all this is just stuff for how you get a Twitter one-time token to post. But ultimately, you could tie these things together, allowing the natural ability of Content Hub to act as a message broker, as it's in the name, a hub to harvest data and to push out to any other system. So this is Twitter. This could be anything else. For sake of argument, you could want to automate an email to to someone high up to say that something they have asked for has been done. All of this can be done just by using and extending these things. So thank you for listening to my gravelly voice for about 50 minutes now. I apologize for the lack of real-time demos, but as I said, I'll dig out the link after this, and I'll either post it in this chat or I'll send it to the guys I work with who can post it onto the web page of this sort of user group. But thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and it's been my pleasure. Thank you. And does anybody have any questions? I knew there was something I was forgetting.
Yeah, we'll just pause for a minute if somebody has any questions on the topic.
Did anybody find it useful? I think is the next thing.
Okay, thanks a lot, Matt, for sharing, and that too in detail with code and everything. So that's really an awesome piece of work that we are about to witness in here. Yeah, it was really useful. Yeah, since I'm working, so we can understand what kind of complexities that we have dealt with, and it's really good to get to see it again.